Welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. Red dust swirled like a miniature storm, clinging to the peeling paint of the old Dodge pickup as it rumbled down the jagged dirt road in Nevada. The sunset set the horizon ablaze, turning the sky into a mottled sea of blood, its crimson-orange light casting shadows across Jake's face. A former mercenary now living in seclusion amidst the desert, he squinted, his gray-green eyes scanning the desolate landscape where not a soul stirred, only endless stretches of sand and rock. Jake had just filled the tank at the last rest stop, a rundown joint with screeching pumps and the acrid stench of burned oil. Now, the desert swallowed every trace of civilization, leaving him with a deadly silence. Jake tapped his fingers on the steering wheel, a steady rhythm like a wordless song. Inside the cab, the smell of engine oil mingled with the faint residue of old cigarettes, a scent that had seeped into his skin through years of running from his past. He wore a faded denim shirt, worn at the shoulders, silver jeans, and dust-caked boots. The dagger sheathed at his belt brushed his hip with every movement, a reminder that peace here was fleeting. Jake wasn't one to be caught off guard, but the desert had a way of keeping even the toughest on edge. He pulled the truck to the side, tires crunching over gravel with a dry, rasping sound. Stepping out, his boots left prints in the red dust. He twisted the gas cap, checking the fuel level one last time before heading to his ramshackle cabin. No electricity, no water, just the solitude he'd chosen. As he sealed the cap, an unnatural chill grazed the back of his neck, like an invisible blade. Jake spun, hand grazing the dagger's hilt, eyes slicing through the thickening darkness. Nothing but brittle scrub and the whistle of wind through rock crevices. He snorted, telling himself it was just old instincts flaring. But he knew better, instincts never lied. Climbing back into the driver's seat, Jake slammed the door, the metallic clang echoing in the still air. He reached for the key, but froze. A thin, razor-sharp blade pressed against his throat, icy and lethal, so close he felt the breath of its wielder. "Drive!" a voice commanded, low and sharp, unmistakably inhuman. Female, but cold as tempered steel in frost, carrying an authority that brooked no mistake. Jake kept his hand on the key, heart steady, as if the blade were a minor nuisance. "You picked the wrong guy," he said, voice even unshaken. In a flash, honed by countless battles, Jake seized the attacker's wrist, twisting with just enough force to hurt but not break. He yanked the blade from her grasp, the metal clattering to the truck's floor. A low, almost amused chuckle came from the back seat. Jake glanced in the rearview mirror, and what he saw made his hackles rise. A face not of earth, silver-green skin shimmering like liquid metal in the faint dashboard light. Eyes black as voids, absorbing all light, reflecting none. Short, jet-black hair clung to her sweat-damp neck. She lounged, legs propped on the seat, relaxed yet predatory, like a panther waiting to pounce. "Quick," she said, voice smooth but sharp as the lost blade. "Good hands." "I like that." Jake drew his own dagger, its 15-centimeter steel gleaming in the dark, and pressed it to her throat, just below the jaw. "You drive," he ordered, voice hard as granite. Her smile widened, revealing sharp, non-human teeth, more akin to a predator's than a person's. "Name?" he asked, eyes never leaving her, every sense taut as a bowstring. "Vara," she replied, voice slick as silk but laced with an alien cadence, as if from another world. "You?" "Jake," he said curtly. "Alien, obviously. What are you doing in my truck?" She tilted her head, eyes glinting like obsidian, as if reading his every thought. "Hiding," she said. "You're hiding too, aren't you?" Jake didn't answer. He didn't like how she spoke, as if she'd seen through the walls he'd built. He gestured with the dagger, its edge grazing her skin, just enough to underscore the threat. "Start the truck." Vara slid into the front seat, her hip brushing Jake's thigh in the cramped cab, a slow, almost deliberate motion. She adjusted the seat, gripping the wheel with the confidence of someone who'd piloted 100 machines. The engine roared as she turned the key, its growl shattering the desert's silence. "Where to?" she asked, voice calm, as if the blade at her throat were a jest. Straight, Jake said, eyes glued to her. Until I say stop. No tricks, or your throat's a sieve. Vara nodded, a sharp gesture, and the truck lurched into the darkness, headlights carving through the night like a blade. The highway stretched empty, not a car or light in sight, only the engines rumble and the winds howl outside. 10 minutes passed in taut silence, neither speaking, just Jake's steady breathing and Vara's sharp glances in the mirror. He finally broke the quiet. Who are you hiding from? People more dangerous than you, Vara replied, eyes flashing in the mirror, as if daring him to push. That's a big assumption, Jake said, voice steady, but his mind churned with possibilities. Alien, armed, hunted. This wasn't simple. No, she said, voice dropping. It's a gamble. She turned just enough to meet his eyes, her gaze piercing, as if stripping away his secrets. You're gambling too, aren't you? Jake didn't answer. He studied her, eyes sharp as knives, searching for any hint of deceit. Her skin shimmered under the dim light, not metallic but alive, adapting to the environment. Her form-fitting armor, not fabric but a second skin, hugged her frame, revealing lean muscles and faint scars. She wasn't human, yet something in her movements, her speech, sparked an odd connection. You're not scared, he said, not a question but a statement. I'm not, Vara replied, voice firm. You should be. Jake snorted, but a small part of him conceded she might be right. He didn't know who she was, what she wanted, or what she fled, but instinct told him she was a storm, and he was caught in its eye. The truck rolled on, the engines hum a steady heartbeat in the desert. Then, ahead, a red light flickered through the dark, like a predator's eye. A cheap motel sign emerged, its neon half dead, spelling a warped Moel. Vara steered into the lot at Jake's command, tires crunching gravel in the quiet night. He lowered the dagger slightly but kept a firm grip, eyes locked on her. Park behind, he said. She complied, guiding the truck around back, where the sign's faint glow didn't reach. Jake stepped out, the desert's chill slapping his face. He motioned Vara to follow, dagger still in hand. One move I don't like, you're done. Vara exited the truck, her movements fluid as a dancer's, each step radiating danger. She leaned toward him, her breath grazing his face, carrying a strange scent, not perfume, but hot metal and desert wind. I wouldn't hesitate either, she said, voice low, almost a whisper, but heavy with menace. The motel door creaked as Jake pushed it open, its rusted hinges groaning like a warning. Room 7 reeked of burnt tobacco and cheap bleach, a combination that churned his stomach. The fluorescent light flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Vara stepped in, her eyes sweeping the room like a hunter sizing up territory. She paused by the window, tattered curtains revealing the desert moonlight, which made her skin gleam like a rare gem. Jake locked the door, bolted it, then checked the bathroom and closet, ensuring no surprises lurked. You armed? He asked, voice sharp. She didn't answer immediately, just slowly shed her outer jacket, revealing a skin-tight top that clung like a second skin. Her bare shoulders bore faint scars, maps of battles past. I'm asking again, Jake said, voice harder, grip tightening on the dagger. I'm always armed, Vara replied, tossing the jacket onto the worn bed, the fabric hitting the mattress with a dry thud. But you didn't give me a choice, did you? Blade at my throat. And you lost it in 2 seconds, Jake said, unrelenting. Vara tilted her head, lips curving into a half smile, dangerous and alluring. That's why I stayed, she said. You're interesting. Jake stepped closer, dagger steady, but his eyes couldn't help tracing her. She wasn't just an alien, she was an enigma, a puzzle he both wanted to solve and avoid. You said hiding, he said. From who? From what? Vara sat on the bed's edge, leaning back, relaxed yet commanding, as if she owned the room, the desert itself. I'm hunted, she said, voice even. My people want me dead. I stole what I shouldn't have. I ran. Simple. Stole what? Jake asked, voice low, testing her truth. Information, she replied, eyes flashing. The kind that could burn an empire. Jake snorted, but part of him knew she wasn't lying. Something in her tone, her gaze, convinced him she carried something more dangerous than any blade. Sounds dramatic, he said, voice laced with sarcasm. Only if I want to see how much you can handle, Vara said, eyes glinting like a challenge. You don't trust me. But you haven't kicked me out or killed me. What's that? Jake sat on the wooden chair opposite, setting the dagger on the table, its steel catching the light. Curiosity, he said, voice clipped, but his eyes stayed on her. Vara laughed, a low, dangerous sound. If I asked you to drive 200 miles more, no questions, would you? No. Jake shot back, no hesitation. She nodded, as if expecting it. You'd ask, she said. Like how you're wondering why I keep looking at your hands. Jake narrowed his eyes, realizing she was right. He hadn't noticed, but she'd been glancing at his hands, assessing them. You are looking, he said, voice low. Yes, Vara said slowly, her gaze drifting to his hands, where calluses and scars told tales of blood-soaked years. You keep them loose like you're always ready. You don't look like a warrior, Jake. But you move like one. Jake muttered, voice dropping, as if old memories stirred. Before I got tired of bleeding for someone else's reasons. Vara leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his, as if reading the scars on his soul. Then maybe you and I aren't so different, she said, voice low, almost a whisper. I don't know you, Jake replied, but part of him conceded she might be right. Something in her gaze, her words, felt oddly familiar, as if they were both fugitives from their pasts. No, she said, lips curving. But I'm watching. And you're not who you pretend to be. Jake stood, stepping to the window, gazing into the pitch-black desert. You take the bed, he said. I'll take the chair. Vara raised an eyebrow, eyes glinting like an invitation. Afraid of what might happen if you lie next to me? Afraid of what might not, he replied, voice dry, but his eyes flickered with amusement. She laughed slowly, a low, seductive sound. Your call. Jake settled into the chair, back straight, dagger within reach, ready for any surprise. Vara stretched out on the bed, one leg crossed over the other, her eyes fixed on him even as the fluorescent light died. He stared out the window, but felt her gaze sharp as an unseen blade, cutting through the dark. The chair creaked as Jake shifted, eyes half closed but sleepless. He hadn't rested this lightly since Syria, when every sound could signal death. A dagger on the table, an alien on the bed. Vara lay still, sweat gleaming on her green skin, like pearls rolling over metal. Each breath she took stirred something in him, a feeling he didn't want to name. You ever close your eyes? He asked into the darkness, voice rough. Not when someone's watching, she replied, voice lazy, like a cat toying with prey. Jake chuckled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. Then you'll never sleep. I don't need much, she said, a hint of mockery in her tone. He leaned forward, studying her silhouette in the dark. What are you, Vara? He asked, not to taunt, but to understand. She turned her head on the pillow, eyes glinting like stars in the night. Meaning? You say you're hunted for information, Jake said, voice low. But you fight like you've killed. Move like you're trained. That armor, it's like it grew from you. Not quite, she said, voice softening. But close. I was made to fight. Engineered, not just trained. You see the surface, not what's beneath. Got it, Jake said, voice steady, but part of him marveled at her revelation. But you haven't tried killing me. She laughed, a low, dangerous sound. Not yet. Then, abruptly, a faint beep sounded, too soft to be close, but enough to snap Jake upright, dagger in hand, eyes scanning the window. Vara was already moving, pressing a hand to the thin wall, head tilted as if listening to something unseen. Scanner, she said, voice sharp. Long range. They're close. How close? Jake asked, voice low, senses on edge. She grabbed her jacket, pulling a compact device from her belt, its metal glinting. Get the keys, she ordered. Move. Jake didn't argue. He snatched the keys, yanking open the motel's back door. A red dot blinked on the outer wall, like a predator's eye. Down! Jake roared, pulling Vara behind a concrete pillar as an energy bolt tore through the air, melting the truck's windshield into a glowing hole. Vara didn't flinch. She rolled, swift as a shadow, tossing a metal disc to the ground. A static shield flared, encasing them in a thin barrier. What's that? Jake demanded, voice urgent. Temporary shield, she replied. 10 seconds tops. Another bolt struck the shield, deflecting sideways, the air humming like thunder. Truck's toast, Jake said, eyeing the shattered glass and scorched metal. Run, Vara commanded. They sprinted across the open lot, following a rusted fence to a narrow ravine. Shots pursued, one grazing a post near Jake's shoulder, sparks erupting like deadly fireworks. They dove into the ravine, Jake rolling and rising in a crouch, clutching the rifle he'd grabbed from the truck. Vara landed lightly, touching his arm, voice low. We're not alone. I know, Jake replied, eyes scanning the slope. A red dot appeared on Vara's chest, then 3 more, like the glowing eyes of death. Jake shoved her down, raised the rifle, and fired 3 shots into the ridge above. A scream echoed, then silence. Vara crawled beside him, eyes flashing in the dark. You shoot better than I thought, she said, a trace of admiration in her voice. You run slower than I expected, Jake replied, voice dry. She laughed, a low, dangerous sound. Maybe I wanted to be caught. Jake glanced down. His hand rested on her thigh, feeling the warmth through her thin armor. She didn't push it away. Take this off, she said, fingers brushing his belt buckle, voice heavy as gravity, pulling him toward an inescapable abyss. I'll ride it. Jake met her gaze, unyielding, locked on her deep black eyes. Vara leaned in, lips near his ear, her breath hot and dangerous. Later, she whispered, a deadly promise. Now we hunt. The desert's darkness swallowed every sound, leaving only the wind's howl through the ravine and Jake's ragged breaths. He gripped his dagger tightly, its cold steel biting into his calloused palm, eyes scanning the moonlit hillside shrouded in shadow. Vara moved beside him, silent as a wraith, each step light but precise, like a hunter born from the night. The faint moonlight barely lit their path, but Jake sensed danger closing in. Behind them, voices in an alien tongue cut through the air, sharp and closer than he liked, sounds not of earth, like metal scraping stone, mixed with urgent whispers. Vara froze, pressing herself against a jagged outcrop, signaling Jake to halt. She whispered something, her voice so low he strained to hear. They're scanning. She ducked fully behind the rock, her body taut as a bowstring. Jake crouched beside her, breath heavy, not from exhaustion, but from the adrenaline surging through his veins. We can't cross open ground, he said, voice low, eyes fixed on the darkness ahead. Then we don't run, Vara replied, her eyes glinting in the dark, fearless. She pulled a small metal sphere from her pouch, no bigger than a golf ball, its surface shimmering like carved obsidian. She pressed a hidden button, and a faint green light blinked, weak but enough for Jake to know this wasn't a toy. Decoy, she explained curtly. I send it one way, we go another. Jake raised an eyebrow, skepticism flickering in his gaze. You had that the whole time? Didn't need it yet, Vara said, voice calm, as if discussing tire pressure. She raised the sphere, fingers gliding over its surface, then launched it. The device shot into the darkness with a shrill whine, like an armored bullet. It darted through the ravine, emitting a faint green glow, mimicking Vara's heat signature and biosignals. The shouts behind them shifted instantly, heavy footsteps veering away, lured by the decoy. They stood still in the shadows, close enough that Jake felt the heat radiating from Vara's silver-green skin. The air between them was heavy, not just with the threat lurking nearby, but with something else, a wordless tension. Where now? She asked, voice low, almost a whisper, but her eyes locked onto his, as if reading his every thought. Jake scanned the hillside, where darkness blended with jagged rocks. There's a warehouse, he said, voice firm. My uncle's old hunting spot, an hour's walk. No power, no water, but it's shelter. Vara nodded, asking no more. Lead. They began climbing, the desert's knife-sharp cold burning their lungs. Gravel crunched underfoot, dust caking their clothes, dried blood crusting Jake's hand from a scrape he couldn't recall getting. Vara moved beside him, swift and tireless, but in one moment she tripped on a dry root, her body stumbling. Jake reacted instantly, catching her waist, steadying her. Her hand gripped his wrist, not to push away, but to hold, as if the gesture spoke louder than words. Their eyes met for a second, but neither spoke, pressing on. By the time they reached the warehouse, dawn was tearing the sky into streaks of red and gold, like a healing wound. The warehouse loomed ahead, a sagging rectangle, its rusted tin roof creaking in the wind. Jake kicked the rotted wooden door, hinges groaning in feeble protest. Inside, the air reeked of mold, rodents, and decayed wood. A sagging sofa with exposed springs, a broken-legged table, and a stained mattress lay scattered on the floor. This wasn't a place to live, just to survive. Vara stepped in, her boots crushing dried insect husks with faint crunches. She ignored the mess, dropping her pack to the floor, shedding her outer jacket, and sitting cross-legged on the cold ground. Her form-fitting armor hugged her body, revealing lean muscles and faint scars, like untold stories. Jake barred the door, wedging a heavy plank across it to fortify their position, then turned. His eyes caught Vara, and he noticed she was bleeding. On her left side, just below her ribs, dark blood soaked her armor, spreading like ink on paper. You didn't say you were hit, Jake said, voice low, tinged with reproach. Vara glanced down, her expression indifferent, as if the wound were a minor detail. Didn't notice, she replied, voice flat. Jake shook his head, crossing to a rusted cabinet in the corner, pulling out an old first aid kit, its paint chipped to reveal dull metal. He knelt beside her, setting the kit on the floor. Let me see. Vara didn't protest. She peeled off the upper armor, exposing flawless silver-green skin that shimmered like pearl under the dim light filtering through the door's cracks. The wound appeared, a shallow, ugly burn, red-rimmed and oozing. Jake worked quickly, clean gauze, antiseptic, bandage. His hands moved with precision, like someone who'd done this hundreds of times on battlefields. Vara didn't flinch, just watched him, her deep black eyes probing as if to see his soul. You heal fast? He asked, voice low, holding the gauze in place. Faster than you, she said, a hint of arrogance in her tone. Jake tightened the bandage, enough for her to feel the pressure. Still hurt? She met his gaze, a spark of challenge in her eyes. Want to see how much I can take? Jake held her stare, unflinching, feeling the electric tension between them, like a live wire. If I say yes? He asked, voice low, laced with curiosity. Her lips curved into a dangerous smile. I won't stop you. Jake's hand lingered on her side longer than needed, feeling the warmth of her strange skin. But he stood, stepping back, forcing himself back to reality. Rest, he said, voice dry. After this, Vara replied, pulling a scorched metal device from her boot, the size of an old phone. A communicator, maybe, but Jake wasn't sure. She set it on the broken table, prying open its casing with a small knife, working with blood and oil-stained fingers, precise as a surgeon. Circuitry sparked faintly green as she rewired it. You're not just muscle, Jake said, a trace of admiration in his voice, eyes tracking her movements. She didn't look up, but her lips twitched. Neither are you. An hour passed, the desert sun climbing higher, its golden light piercing the slatted blinds, illuminating the dusty floor. Jake sat on the sagging sofa, rifle across his lap, eyes half closed. He dozed for a moment, but a faint clink, metal on wood, snapped him awake. Vara stood there, shirtless, her back to him, sunlight carving sharp lines across her body, like a living statue. She turned, catching his gaze. I'm washing, she said, voice even. With what water? Jake asked, eyebrow raised. She nodded outside. The spigot. Enough to clean, not to drink. Jake stood, following her, not entirely out of distrust, but because part of him didn't want her out of sight. Vara stood under the rusted spigot outside the warehouse, water trickling weakly, rinsing dust and blood from her skin. Her hair darkened, clinging to her shoulders, her armor tighter when wet, outlining every curve. Jake tried to look away, but his eyes kept drifting back, drawn by an unseen force. "Staring again?" she asked, a teasing edge in her voice, not turning. Jake chuckled, leaning against the doorframe. "What if I am?" She didn't turn, but her voice dropped, almost inviting. "Then look. I'm not hiding." Back inside, her wet shirt clung to her. She passed Jake, tossing her jacket to the floor with a dry thud. She sat on the mattress, eyes weary but sharp. "I'm tired," she said, voice low. "But I don't trust sleep." "Same," Jake replied, standing at the door, gazing at the horizon where the sun scorched the desert. "When's the last time you slept safe?" Vara looked at him, a flicker of pain in her eyes, so brief he nearly missed it. "Before I learned what trust costs," she said, voice low, like confessing a buried secret. Jake tossed her an old blanket, then sat nearby, rifle on his lap, eyes scanning the door's gaps. The desert sun rose higher, heat invading the warehouse like an intruder. He tried focusing on watch, but his gaze kept drifting to Vara. She lay on the mattress, eyes closed, breathing even, but Jake knew she wasn't asleep. No one like her would leave themselves vulnerable. He leaned against the wall, muscles aching from last night's escape. But it wasn't exhaustion keeping him awake. It was her. That smooth green skin, the way she moved, and those damn eyes, not cold, not kind, but holding something he couldn't name. Jake closed his eyes for a second, then heard a rustle. Vara sat up, the blanket slipping to her waist, sunlight glinting off her shoulders. "You don't sleep," she said, voice certain. Jake didn't answer, just looked at her, curiosity unmasked. "I hear your breathing," she said, voice low. "You hold it every time I move. You keep twitching," he muttered, voice dry. "Hard to rest when someone's waiting to catch a bullet." "I'm always waiting," she replied, standing, stretching. Her armor shifted, revealing a flat stomach, a faint scar running across like a reminder of old battles. "Something's wrong," she said, eyes locking onto him. "And I'm tired of pretending I don't care." "You want answers," Vara said, voice low, like a challenge. "Don't want," Jake shot back, voice hard. "Need. You dragged me into your war, and I'm bleeding for a ghost story." Vara moved fast, closing the distance until Jake felt the heat of her body. He grabbed her wrist instinctively, fingers tight but not painful. She didn't pull away, just stared, her gaze burning through his defenses. "Let go," she said, voice low, almost a command. "No," Jake replied, voice low, eyes never leaving hers. They stood frozen, the air between them heavy as a storm's prelude. Then, like wildfire, Vara surged forward, her lips crashing into his. The kiss wasn't gentle, it was fierce, a battle for control. Her hands gripped his shirt, tearing it slightly under her strength. Jake's dagger fell, clattering sharply on the floor. He wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close, feeling her body press against his chest. Their mouths locked, breaths stolen, power shifting between them like a live current. She bit his lower lip, drawing a bead of blood, and when he growled, she kissed harder, as if devouring his reaction. Jake spun her, pinning her back against the rough wooden wall, hands gripping her waist. "Still not talking," he growled between her lips, voice rough. "Still asking the wrong questions." She shot back, eyes flashing, both defiant and seductive. He kissed her again, harder, longer, as if to brand her. When they broke apart, both panted, chests heaving, eyes locked. "You like control?" she asked, voice low, lips curving. Jake didn't answer, just stared, his gaze saying she wasn't the only one who could take. He pushed off the wall, chest still rising, fighting for calm. "I don't care if you were born in a lab or from broken promises," he said, voice hard. "Want me to keep fighting for you? Give me the truth." Vara stood still, her eyes scanning him, weighing her choice. Then she pulled a long, thin device from her pouch, its metal surface flickering with faint blue light. "Not just a communicator," she said, voice low. "This is the key to activate a rebel fleet. I didn't just steal information. I stole what could start a war." Jake stared at the device, feeling the weight of her words. "So you're the spark," he said, voice low, eyes never leaving her. She nodded, her gaze hard but tinged with pain. "They can't launch without it," she said. "And they'll kill to keep it dormant." Jake leaned against the wall, mind reeling. He'd stepped into a game bigger than he'd imagined, and Vara wasn't just a piece, she held the board. But looking into her eyes, he saw something undeniable. She didn't want to do this alone. And he, though loath to admit it, didn't want her to fight alone. Jake collapsed onto the sagging sofa, its broken springs groaning, his mind reeling like it was caught in a sandstorm. Vara's words echoed in his head, a key, a rebel fleet, a war that could ignite the stars. He looked at her, his gaze sharp but heavy, grappling with the weight of what he'd just heard. "You could have told me sooner," he said, voice low, tinged with frustration but not quite accusation. Vara stood motionless, the early sunlight filtering through the slatted blinds, bathing her silver-green skin in a glow that made her seem like a living statue. "I didn't trust you," she replied, voice low, blunt as a blade. "Now you've seen the worst of me, and you're still here." Her eyes locked onto his, not challenging but searching for a sign, a confirmation that he wouldn't turn away. Jake drew a deep breath, his chest heaving under his worn denim shirt. "I'll help you deliver it," he said, voice steady, like a vow forged in steel. "But no more games." Vara stepped closer, slow and deliberate, each movement light but intentional, like a predator approaching prey. She stopped just before him, so close Jake felt the heat radiating from her body, a warmth not entirely human. "Then don't lie to me," she said, voice low, eyes flashing. "You wanted that kiss." Jake met her gaze, unflinching, feeling like he stood before a fire both seductive and deadly. "Still do," he replied, voice rough, no pretense. Vara leaned in, her lips grazing his, soft but provocative, like a lethal invitation. "Then earn it," she whispered, her hot breath brushing his skin. Jake held her stare for a heartbeat, then stood, his hand lightly touching her waist, but he stopped, forcing himself back to reality. "Later," he said, voice dry, though his eyes still burned. The next morning, the desert sun's scorching heat crept into the warehouse, turning the air stifling, like a steel forge. Vara moved with razor-sharp precision, a machine built for war. She wore a clean tank top, tight pants, and her thin armor stashed beneath the floor, ready for any threat. Jake sat on a wooden crate, wiping dried blood and dust from his dagger, its steel glinting in the light. His eyes flicked to Vara, lingering on the slim metal device she always carried. "Always keep that key on you?" he asked, voice low. She nodded, not looking up from inspecting her armor. "Lose it, and the rebels lose everything," she said. "I'm not just a witness. I'm the match." Jake chewed on that, feeling the weight of the burden she carried. A match could burn an empire, or itself to ash. "What now?" he asked. "Bunker down here a week and hope they don't find us?" Vara shook her head, eyes sharp as blades. "Too risky. They'll scan again. We move." Jake nodded, but another question gnawed at him. The truck was a charred wreck after last night's attack, and the nearest town was 20 miles across open desert. Options were slim. Then, like a cruel twist of fate, a knock echoed, steady, cold. 1, 2, 3. Jake sprang up, dagger in hand, muscles taut as a bowstring. Vara pressed against the wall beside the door, gripping a small device, her eyes blazing with alertness. Another knock, sharper. "Police," a man's voice called, low and calm. "Heard someone's using the old warehouse. Can you open up?" Jake cursed under his breath. The warehouse was on his uncle's land, a forgotten patch long abandoned, but likely still in local records. He glanced at Vara, eyes seeking her cue. She nodded, signaling him to handle it. Jake tucked the dagger into his waistband, pulling his shirt over it, and cracked the door just enough to talk. A man in his 50s stood there, in a police uniform, badge gleaming in the morning sun. One hand hovered near his holster, the other shielding his eyes from the glare. "Morning," Jake said, voice even, forcing a strained smile. "Trouble, officer?" The cop squinted, his gaze piercing, like he was trying to cut through Jake's facade. "Report of activity here," he said. "You know you need a permit to camp on family land?" Jake's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Heard reports of armed criminals passing through," he countered, voice light but edged. "Man and a woman, dangerous. Want to make sure I'm not them?" The cop snorted but didn't back off. Jake stepped outside, keeping the door ajar to block the view inside. "Just a mechanic from Reno," he said. "Needed a break from the noise." "That okay, officer?" "Alone?" the cop asked, voice too calm, like he was setting a trap. Jake chuckled. "Nah, my wife's inside. She doesn't like surprise guests." The door creaked wider, and Vara stepped out, hair messily tied, shirt askew, a streak of dust smudged on her cheek like a deliberate mark. She said nothing, just sidled up, wrapping an arm around Jake's waist, her body pressing against his with easy familiarity. The cop's eyes raked over her, searching for a crack in their story. "You two from around here?" he asked. "Texas-born," Jake said smoothly, voice firm. "Road tripping, trying not to bake in the sun." The cop nodded slowly, but his eyes stayed wary. "Mind if I take a look inside?" "Sure," Jake said, voice hardening. "But I'd rather you didn't." Vara smiled, her voice soft but sharp. "We just want peace, sir," she said. "No laws broken, no bodies hidden." The cop studied them a moment longer, then stepped back, hands still near his holster. "See anything odd, you report it," he said, voice low. "Will do," Jake replied, smile unwavering. The cop returned to his car, but the silence he left behind hung heavy, like a warning. Jake locked the door, exhaling, feeling like he just crossed a minefield. "You kept your cool," he muttered, turning to Vara. She stood still, her eyes glinting with something, not fear, but appraisal. "You called me your wife," she said, voice low. "Didn't even blink." Jake shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "Needed a believable story." She stepped closer, her gaze locking onto his. "You protected me," she said, voice soft, almost a whisper. "Like I was yours." "You're not," Jake said, but his voice lacked conviction. She laughed, a sound both dangerous and alluring. "Not yet." They left the warehouse 20 minutes later, moving swiftly through brittle scrub, where the sun scorched everything to a burned yellow. Jake led the way to an old storage shed 3 miles off, a crumbling structure hidden behind massive boulders. Inside, a dust-caked ATV sat, its battery wired to an ancient solar panel, still functional. Vara climbed into the passenger seat with the ease of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. "Sure you don't want me to drive?" she asked, eyes twinkling. "Nope," Jake replied, sliding into the driver's seat. "You call the shots. I steer." They tore through the desert, tires grinding sand and rock, the engine snarling like a woken beast. Before sunset, they reached a roadside diner, a squat building with a flickering neon sign reading, "Diner." Jake parked behind, out of prying eyes, and they slipped into the back corner booth. The waitress, tired and surly, slapped down 2 grimy menus and a water pitcher, then shuffled off without a word. Vara eyed the menu, curious but guarded. "Know how to eat like us?" Jake asked, a teasing edge in his voice. "I observe," she replied, her voice softer than usual. "You first." Jake ordered 2 burgers, and when the food arrived, he took a bite, watching Vara. She mimicked him, gripping the burger with both hands, taking a small bite, chewing slowly. A soft moan escaped her throat, and Jake nearly choked on his water. "Disgusting," she said, still chewing, eyes sparkling. "But I like it." Jake laughed, the first real laugh since meeting her. "Welcome to America." They ate in silence, like fugitives who knew the next meal might not come. Their eyes met occasionally, wordless but loaded with meaning. As they left, The sky was pitch black, stars glittering over the desert. Vara glanced at him, eyes flashing. "When I said I wanted to ride you," she said softly, voice low, "I wasn't joking." Jake stopped, turning to her. "You're not ready," he said, voice dry, but his eyes blazed. She smiled, leaning closer. "But you will be." Midnight found them in a crumbling warehouse. One wall collapsed, the gaping roof exposing a star-filled sky. Vara scanned the air with a small device, then nodded. "Safe." But her voice held caution, as if safety were an illusion. The warehouse was frigid, the air sharp as a blade. Jake dropped his pack, pulling flint and a tinderbox, sparking a fire from dry grass and wood scraps. The flames roared, their golden-orange light pushing back the dark. Vara stood over the fire, her bronze-green skin shimmering like liquid metal. She stripped off her tank top, tossing it aside, standing half-bare without a hint of self-consciousness. Jake didn't look away, his eyes tracing the scars on her body, each one a story of survival. "Comfortable?" he asked, a teasing note in his voice, but his eyes were serious. She turned, displaying her sleek back, muscles shifting under her skin. "Sure, it's wet," she said. "This dries faster." "Convenient," Jake replied, eyes fixed on her. She glanced over her shoulder, eyes glinting. "Got something to say, Jake?" He stood, stepping closer to the fire, crouching, the light illuminating his scarred face. "You make everything look like a choice," he said, voice low. She laughed, a low, dangerous sound. "Maybe." Jake stared into the fire, its crackle like the desert's heartbeat. "Take your shirt off," he said, voice even. "Fair's fair." He shed his jacket, then his shirt, revealing a chest crisscrossed with scars and taut muscle. The cold air bit his skin, but Vara's gaze made it irrelevant. She knelt by the fire, legs tucked beneath her, the light dancing on her shoulders, her skin gleaming like jade. "You're not asking any more," she said. "You've answered most of it," Jake replied, eyes locked on her. She tilted her head, reading him like an open book. "Trust me now." "Trust you're not lying," he said, voice firm. She let the words hang, then spoke, voice low. "I used to think humans were weak." Jake didn't blink. "We are," he said. "But you don't see it that way." She nodded, a flicker of respect in her eyes. "I've killed," he said softly, voice heavy, like a confession. "For reasons worse than what you're running from. That's why you didn't flinch when I did," she replied, voice steady. "Regret it?" he asked, eyes searching for truth. "No," she said. "But I wish I didn't have to." They watched the fire, its crackle cutting through the cold. Jake's hand rested on his knee, fingers twitching. Vara stood, crossing to him, kneeling before him. "You're tense," she said, taking his hand, guiding it to her side, where her wound had faded to a faint line. He felt the strong pulse of her body, not human but fiercely alive. "I'm not fragile," she said, voice low. "But I don't want to be alone." Jake looked into her eyes, seeing raw truth. She kissed him, soft, savoring every second. His arms circled her waist, her skin smooth under his rough palms. Her breath hitched, and she climbed onto his lap, the fire's glow gilding her shoulders, making her look like a living flame. "I still want to ride you," she whispered, lips near his ear. "Not for power. To feel something real." Jake held her tight, her warmth banishing the cold. The fire crackled, and in that moment, amid the desert's dangers, they had only each other. The desert dawn painted the sky a pale orange, its faint light slipping through the crumbling warehouse's gaps, falling on Vara. She stirred, the thin blanket sliding off her shoulder, revealing silver-green skin scarred by a life forged in war. Her eyes swept the room, sharp as a blade, silent but tense, as if she knew danger always lurked in the shadows. Jake woke beside her, hands still gripping the dagger's hilt hidden beneath the blanket, muscles taut by instinct. "Thought you were asleep," he muttered, voice rough, his gaze flickering over her. "I hear," Vara replied, voice low, unwavering. "Hear what?" Jake asked, sitting up, eyes scanning the wall's cracks. She shook her head, a flicker of caution in her gaze. Nothing. That's what worries me. Jake stood, crossing to the entrance, his boots grinding against the dusty floor. The dawn's light carved harsh lines across his face, scars on his shoulder glinting like a map of his past. He stared into the desert, where no soul stirred, only endless sand and rock. They scanning again? He asked, voice low, hand ready to draw the blade. They never stop, Vara said, rising, the blanket falling to the floor. They just haven't caught up. Jake turned, his gaze locking onto her. Then we stop running. Vara studied him, her face unreadable, as if weighing whether he grasped the weight of his words. You weren't born for this fight, she said, voice low, tinged with doubt but not disdain. Was, Jake replied, nodding to the long scar on his shoulder, where a blade once nearly ended him. Got the demons to prove it. She gave a slight nod, a spark of respect in her eyes. She crossed to the warehouse's corner, opening her armor pack, pulling out a thin metal piece that shimmered with faint blue light. Jake watched, realizing it wasn't just a tool, it was part of her. This tech, he said, voice low. Not just armor, is it? She nodded, fingers gliding over its surface. A beacon, she explained. When active, every ship, every hunter knows where I am. It's a lighthouse, and I can't turn it off. And you wore it to Earth, Jake said, eyes sharpening. No choice, Vara replied, her voice dropping, as if confessing a painful secret. It's fused to my body. Only death removes it. Jake knelt beside her, his gaze searching the depths of her black eyes for truth. You said you stole information? A rogue soldier. But it's more than that, isn't it? No, she said, voice firm but laced with pain. I'm a weapon built to destroy. But I saw the truth, the crimes of those who made me, and I chose to burn them down. Jake stood, tossing a log onto the crackling fire, the flames flaring, pushing back the desert's chill. Earth's not safe, he said, voice low, eyes never leaving her. She nodded, her gaze hard. Not while I'm here. Then we leave it, Jake said, voice solid as stone, as if the decision had been made long ago. Vara blinked, surprise flickering in her eyes, quickly replaced by appraisal. You know what that means? She asked, voice low, almost a whisper. Giving up everything, Jake replied, eyes unwavering. Done it before. She stepped closer, so near Jake felt the heat of her skin. Would you kill for me? She asked, her gaze piercing, as if pulling his soul bare. If I have to, he said, no hesitation. Vara leaned in, kissing him, a brief, fierce kiss, like a vow sealed in fire. Get ready, she said, voice sharp. We leave before sunset. At dusk, they reached a meteor crater deep in the desert, where a spacecraft lay hidden beneath shimmering camouflage, like a mirage. Vara powered it up, control panels glowing blue, the engines whined like a beast waking. Jake settled into the co-pilot's seat, eyes scanning the cockpit, feeling like he'd stepped into a world not his own. As the ship broke through Earth's atmosphere, Vara glanced at him. You didn't hesitate, she said, a trace of admiration in her voice. Neither did you, Jake replied, eyes locked on her. They headed for a rebel base in Jupiter's orbit, a cold steel fortress drifting among the stars. Upon landing, Vara turned to him. They'll ask who you are, she said, voice low. Tell the truth, Jake said, voice firm. The base was frigid, its corridors bathed in eerie blue light, metal echoing under their steps. 3 tall warriors in black armor blocked their path, weapons glinting. Vara stepped forward, fearless. I bring the key, she said, voice sharp as a blade. And the truth. They were led to a council chamber, a vast room with metal walls etched with galactic maps. An elder woman, silver-haired with eyes like tempered steel, rose. Vara, she said, voice low. You bring a warship, a human, and chaos. I bring the key, Vara replied, unwavering. And proof of war crimes. She activated the key, and a hologram flared, projecting images of ruined schools, children dead in rubble. The council froze, murmurs rippling through the room. The elder sat, her gaze heavy. The evidence is real, she said. What do you want? Justice, Vara said, voice steady. And Earth's protection. The elder's eyes shifted to Jake, boring into him. What is he to you? Vara stepped to Jake, placing a hand on his chest, feeling his strong heartbeat. The reason I'm alive, she said, voice low but resolute. The elder tilted her head. You could lead, she said. But you'd have to cut him loose. Vara's hand tightened on Jake's chest, her eyes blazing with defiance. I don't take orders anymore, she said, voice sharp as a knife. I choose him. The council erupted in tense whispers. The elder nodded slowly, a flicker of respect in her eyes. Go, she said. They left the base at dawn, their ship plunging into the boundless void. Jake took the pilot's seat, hands steady on the controls, eyes focused. Vara leaned against the doorway, watching him with a faint smile. Sure you don't want me to drive? She teased, voice light. You got us into orbit, Jake replied, eyes glinting. Just follow my lead. He punched in coordinates, an unnamed moon, far from war and hunters. Vara climbed onto his lap, arms looping around his shoulders, her breath warm against his neck. Take it off, she whispered, laughing against his lips, her eyes sparkling with newfound freedom. Jake did, his hands sliding beneath her armor, feeling the warm skin below. No war behind them, no hunters in pursuit. Just them, the stars, and a new beginning, where they'd write their own story. Dear readers, as we close the journey of Jake and Vara, I hope this tale of desert fire has left an indelible mark on your heart. Their path, from Nevada's sands to Jupiter's orbit, wasn't just a flight from hunters, but a testament to the power of choice and courage. Jake, a scarred ex-mercenary, and Vara, an alien weapon who chose rebellion, found each other in the dark, not by fate, but because they dared to believe in something greater, freedom. The story's core lies in this: even against forces beyond comprehension, humans, and beings like Vara, can shape their destiny through will and loyalty to what they hold dear. The lesson is clear: true strength comes not from weapons or tech, but from the resolve to stand, even when the cost is everything. Jake left Earth, Vara rejected power to choose him. These choices remind us that sometimes, you must step into the dark to find light. I want to ask you, which moment of Jake and Vara moved you? Did Vara's defiance inspire you, or did Jake's steadfastness make you reflect? Did their stand before the council, or their quiet peace among the stars, spark a desire to explore more? Your feedback is the fire that lights my creative path. Share your thoughts, whether awe, confusion, or curiosity. This story is a resonance between us, writer and reader, crafting universes that exist only in our shared imagination. And who knows? Like Jake and Vara, you might be watched, awaiting the next tale. Tell me, are you ready to step forward?